Hey, Philip, welcome back.
Kent, how are you?
Good, good. So, when you're a founder, the typical stereotype is I don't know if you want to say Scrooge, but it's about the bottom line.
Oh, yeah.
It's about building on the bottom line.
Yes.
And the easy caricature is greed
Hmm.
and making something that I can control and get richer, as it were. I don't know if that's true fully, but it makes good movies and stories.
Yeah.
And when you're a Christian, that's a different story, supposedly. You have different values, supposedly. How did you try to reconcile all that?
Good question, Kent. That's a hard one.
It is a hard one.
Because
I think it's why Jesus talked about money all the time.
he did.
We don't we
He
don't we
a
don't preach that
lot. He
much.
said a lot about money.
He did.
Good question. I Let me put it this way. And not every entrepreneur is going to fall into this category. I know there are great people that work in the nonprofit space, and that is a great work that they do, and I applaud them. But when you are in business, a for-profit business, when you say for-profit, that's what you're in business for. And I often told often told our employees, or at least our leadership, is like, we're not in this just to be liked. We're not in it to ma just make our clients happy. We certainly want to do that. We're in this to make a profit. That's what a
Right.
for-profit does. And that's how you measure your success every year. My CPA would do my tax returns, and Uncle Sam certainly wants to know what's on the bottom line because that's what they're going to charge you in taxes. But it was also a measure of how we are progressing as a business. And so if you have a business and your profit line is like this, that's not a growing business. And so when you say, are you in it for the profit? Yeah. I'll put it this way. You know how Paul in his writings, I'm gonna get scriptural here, but Paul in his writings, he's writing to the Jews,
Yeah.
and he's saying, "I'm one of you." He goes, "You adhere to all the laws." He said, "I'm a Hebrew of the Hebrews."
Right.
Well, I'm a capitalist of the capitalists. I
Okay.
believe in making money. I believe in generating a profit. And certainly, if you have a 401k or you've got an IRA and you've got that invested in the market, you want those companies to return the biggest return on investment that they can. You want them to maximize profit. So, yes, I was acutely attuned to what my bottom line was. And it was a goal every year to increase that number, to increase that number. Did that always mean that increased the amount of money in my personal checking account? No, it did not. I'm going to do a little sidetrack here, but that's one misnomer about entrepreneurs, small business owners, is at the end of the year, you may show a gigantic profit. And people say, wow, look at that. You're making that. No, 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 no. What you're showing is profit. But what comes out of that, number one, is what I pay myself. Number two, what I pay Uncle Sam.
Okay.
That's a big number. And then number
Yeah.
three, what I'm going to invest in the company to grow it for the next year.
Okay. Sure.
And so many times that big number that you see that is your profit, you're getting a small percentage of that you're actually getting for your benefit. But nonetheless, I wanted to drive that profit larger and larger every year, every year, every year. And so, Kent, you are right. Money in itself is not evil. Jesus did not say
Right. Right.
money. It's your attitude toward money, the love of money. So what I did find as a business owner, and particularly as the business grew and we started getting more profitable and more successful, I had to guard against a sense of greed and selfishness.
Okay.
And I will admit to you that that was something I had to fight. And I'm not saying I was always successful, but you've got to pay attention to that bottom line. But at the same time, you've got to think about number one, I looked at my business as a calling from God, and we've covered that in previous episodes.
Yes.
I felt like this was my calling. And so
Yes.
as such, I looked at it, everything I did and the success that I would have in building the business, I would look at that as a gift from God, not something that I did. Yes, I took personal pride in when I would do a job and do it well, but the whole platform that was laid in front of me that allowed me to do that was a gift from God. And I always tried to remember any success I have is not just because my hard work, not just because of my smarts, not just because of my strategy, but it was because God had put that gift in me to do that. And I think that's so important to remember, particularly for Christian entrepreneurs.
Right. How did you do that? What are the practicalities of, oh, I need to remember? That doesn't, you know what I mean,
I mean,
work
it
by
sounds
itself.
very basic, but very simple. Daily prayer was like, Lord, I thank you for this business. These clients, you led them to me, and I thank you for just acknowledging a thankful heart goes a long, long way to kind of keeping feelings of greed and self-sufficiency and selfishness and pride at bay.
Okay.
Being thankful, being very thankful.
And you
Uh,
made sure that was part of your prayer.
Absolutely. Number one, I prayed about my business regularly. I prayed for my employees. I even prayed for my clients. I would pray for a client. They've been very good. They have been a blessing to my business. Lord, bless their business because they've been a
Sure.
blessing to one of your children. And so
Okay.
that attitude of everything that comes to me, God, you've allowed it and you have provided for it. And I am so very thankful, keeping a very thankful attitude. But a second thing that I think is important, and I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal or anything like that,
Just
but
just share.
learning a spirit of generosity. I can't tell you how liberating that is. And I actually learned that before I had my business. And I wasn't going to tell this, but I think I am because I feel a prompting to do so.
Okay.
You know, in the origin story, I told how I lost my job.
Right.
What precipitated that was sort of I was making more money. The last job I had was a great. I got a promotion, got a raise, was doing well, had bought my first house. But at that same time, I felt a leading to give sacrificially in missions giving, like to missionaries. Our,
Okay.
our, our church had a regular missions pledge that you would do every year. And I had given a nominal amount in my 20s
Of
and so on.
course.
But it was at that point I was doing a little bit better. And I'm like, I'm going to give more than I think I can afford. And
Well,
it was something no one pressured me. It's something on my own. I feel like I need to do this. And I made that commitment. Now that was probably about 9 months before I lost my job.
okay.
So my initial thought is, you hear the stories. I gave, I was generous or whatnot, and then I got a check in the mail and it was 4 times as much. Well, my story was I felt led to give and to give more and to give sacrificially, and I lost my job.
I don't hear too many of those testimonies.
Right. I really wasn't going to share this, but I kept that commitment even after losing my job. And I started my business, even though money was tight. I kept that commitment.
Mhm.
It made a difference because it taught me generosity above profit.
Oh,
And I learned that lesson when times were bad. Many people
right.
say, I'll be generous when I hit pay dirt. It's too
Of
late.
course.
You develop a spirit of generosity when you don't have much. It was the little widow that got Jesus' attention. that gave the
Right.
smallest offering of the day, but it was out of her lack that she gave. And so learning even in the early days of the business how to be generous. You can't do all things. You're limited in funds. I get that, but you can find ways to give back. It could be finding someone in need. You can give anonymously. I heard of somebody that lost their job. I knew what an impact that was on me. I didn't have a lot, but I slipped a little something to them
Okay.
anonymously.
Sure.
That built within me a spirit of generosity that has grown and that I guard very, very closely because it liberates you. It liberates you from the clutches that money will try to get a hold of you.
Sure.
Another thing that I did, and it really wasn't a strategy to guard against selfishness or greed. I wanted to do it, but I will never forget the first time I was able to give a bonus to my employees. And we were very small, only a handful of employees. And I had set some benchmarks, some goals that we want to reach as a company. And I will never forget this day. I brought them into the conference room and they didn't know what was coming. And I announced, congratulations, we have reached our goal. And as such,
Oh,
each one of you is going to get blank.
X dollars.
You would have thought they had won the Super Bowl.
Mm.
There was whooping, there was hollering, there was high fiving. I will tell you, Kent, I don't know if there was ever a time in my business I felt more proud than I did walking out of that conference room. I felt
I
like
could see that.
I felt like a million. I felt like a daddy on Christmas morning. You know, when he's seen his kids.
Right.
That's what I felt. It was a great feeling that we've generated some
Yes.
more profit in this company, and I am sharing that with the people that helped me to do that, and it is making them really, really happy. And then I remember on another occasion, and we were a little bit bigger then, but it was kind of the time frame. It was when iPads first came out. Okay, so a long time
Okay.
ago, iPads, and that was all the rage. Everybody wanted an iPad. And I had an iPad. I'm a gadgets guy, so I always get the first of everything. So I
Yes, you
was,
are. Yes, you are.
and so, boss man comes in, oh, let me see that, let me see that. And everybody's enamored with my iPad. And so that Christmas, I don't remember what we'd done in the past, but just some nominal little Christmas gifts to the employees. Again, we were bigger, but funds were still tight. But I figured out a way that I could buy everybody an iPad, everybody in the company. And we
That's
had a little
fabulous.
Christmas celebration, a little dinner, in the conference room. And then I wrapped them up and I handed them out. Same reaction. You would have thought I'd given them $1 million. They were
That's
so appreciative, and it did my heart so much good. So
of course.
those things help you when you really suppress that greed, that hold of money, that love of money when you are generous in spirit. And not just in generous in spirit, but generous in money as well. And so I
Right.
think that's very important to learn early on in the business. And then just in your personal time, I think probably the hardest part for me is being generous with my time in building the business because you only have 24 hours in a day and you
That's your entire
there's
focus.
something to do all the time. But I made sure I couldn't do everything, but there were a few things that I could do that like on a weekend, one Saturday a month. I would go with the prison ministry team to a prison ministry, teach a Bible study, lead some songs. And I know a lot of people do that. But for me, it was a busy time in my life. I had a lot of other commitments, but keeping that one little commitment kept me grounded, particularly
Right.
walking in behind prison walls and seeing people in that situation
Yeah.
and knowing where I was. It fostered a sense of gratitude and a longing to help others. And that's very important all the way around. One thing
If
we did that I really liked, and we did this, I don't know, toward the end and then on up until we sold the business. I would always try to do, I don't have any children.
okay.
So I have a bunch of nieces and nephews, so I, get them stuff at Christmas. But I always like to get, they have the angel trees. I don't know if they have those, but I always like to get a couple of kids. and go shopping for Angel Tree kids for Christmas.
Right.
And I'd done that for years just myself. But the idea occurred to me, you know what? We're going to do this as a company project. And it was such a great thing. So we adopted a bunch of Angel Tree kids. And so the week before Thanksgiving, we would have a big meal, everybody in the company. And after the meal in the afternoon, rather than going back to the office, we would divide up into groups, and each group would be given a debit card and several kids. And we all went to the shopping center and had a big shopping spree for our Angel Tree kids and brought the gifts back and put them that we had a tree in the office and put them until the people would come and pick them up. It so much good came out of it. It was good team building. It was
Right.
focusing on giving back. It was being generous. It was all of those things all wrapped in one and getting everybody in the Christmas spirit. I love that. That was one of my favorite kind of extracurricular things that we would do every year. Really love that.
Yeah, I could see the activity of the generosity, the sharing it with others, the rewards of giving to them and them feeling it back would be great ways to keep greed and selfishness at a distance.
Yeah. So focus on a community focus on what can we do as a group to help somebody else, make somebody else's
Right.
life better rather than, I want the bonus.
Right. Right. Right.
So,
Which we all do at some level.
oh, sure, sure. The third thing that, oddly enough, this lesson was taught to me by attorneys. So I work,
Oh,
my company, we work with attorneys. That's what we did. So I spent a lot of time with attorneys. And they introduced me to something called pro bono. I didn't know what pro bono was, but attorneys would take so much, and firms, as a firm or individual attorneys, would take so much pro bono work every year. And that means they're doing legal work for free. It could be for indigent people, it could be for, you know,
right.
single
Depending
mom,
on
it
your
could,
specialty.
yeah. And so I saw that and I'm like, what a great idea. Now, the conflict for me is that I do have sort of a beating heart and I just want to give everybody everything. And you can't. You've got to put some caps on it. But I would find time to give away occasionally what we would normally charge clients for. And it might be just somebody on the side, somebody that I knew, uh, another small business that's trying to start up. They're trying to get their computer set up. And I have empathy for them because I know where they are and they don't have the money for my guys to come over and to do that. And on occasion, I would try to give away our services. Again, I would forcefully resist against the creeping effect of money controlling your life, even as I'm watching that bottom line. So
The conflict is always there,
it is, yeah,
but you're looking for legitimate needs. So when
yeah,
you give those legitimate needs your attention, then there's your pro bono.
exactly, exactly. And on occasion, I would, and this had happened to me before. Again, it's something I learned from attorneys. Occasionally, they would send you a bill and you get sticker shock. Oh my
Mm.
goodness. Number one, attorneys know how to bill. I mean, they know how to
Every
bill.
15 minutes.
Yes. And so one time, this is off track a little bit, but one time I knew a client had gotten one of my bills and they go, "Oh my goodness, you bill for everything." And I go, "You attorneys taught me how to do that. Y'all-
Oh,
you taught me well."
yeah.
And I picked it up. So yes, but
Right.
but on occasion there would be at the bottom it said voluntary reduction. They just reduce it by so much. And I would do that on
Okay.
occasion if I thought we were exorbitant or, they had paid more
Right.
than really they had planned on or needed to. It wasn't often. I didn't do that a lot, but there was occasion to do that. So
Okay.
don't be so rigid that you can't give away stuff sometime.
That's great.
Finally, the biggest thing for me, obviously, is your Christian upbringing and just knowing what is important in life. And I'm going to give props to my parents and my grandparents on both sides. Tremendous Christian influences on my life and grounding me in what's important. My grandfather, who I'm going to call his name, he's passed away, but Albert Hampton, my
Okay.
paternal grandfather, great man. I don't know that he graduated high school. I don't believe he, I think he had to go work on the farm. A greater man I've never known. Just solid as a rock, generous heart, knew the Bible, great Bible teacher, just a great, great man. And I loved him so much. And in many ways, as I get older, I'm becoming more like him, which I love.
Sure.
But I used to mow his yard as a kid, so I spent a lot of time over at his house. Pawpaw lived to be 91, lived a good, ripe old age. And I remember the last time I saw him, I had been to Jackson. I was in the middle of building the business. I was in the growth phase of the early
Okay.
days. And so I had to make a trip home for as a holiday or something. And it was at my parents' house. All my family lived in Jackson. I lived in Nashville. And so I was at my parents, and I think my mom said, you probably need to go by and see your grandfather. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm going to be honest, it was a checklist. I need to do this because it's the right thing to do.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry
Yeah.
Christmas.
And I loved him, but uh,
Oh,
I've got to get back because I have clients waiting. I've got projects waiting. I've got things I've got to do. That was on my mind, not
right.
spending time with Paul Paul. But I went by, and I did love him very much. And his mind was still sharp, even though, his body was failing. And so, oh, come in, Philip, come in. And I will never forget this conversation. I think he knew his time was coming to an end. We all knew, but you don't want to admit it. And so he's asking me about what my business. He's asking, and I'm telling him all the, Pawpaw's growing and God's good. And are you involved in the church there in Nashville? Yes, Pawpaw, I'm teaching Sunday school. Oh, good, good. So after he asked me about all of my stuff, he begins he begins a life review
Mm.
of his life. And he began to tell me everything when he first got in the church as a young man, when he and my grandmother married, had children, and began to just tell me his life. Now, Pawpaw lived virtually all of the 20th century, born 1908.
Wow.
He'd seen it all. Seen World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, landing on the moon. Great, momentous thing. The invention of the computer, the internet. He'd seen it all. When Pawpaw's recalling his life, there was no big stuff like that. What he was telling me, oh, I remember Mr. Peters used to live across the street. We'd go over there when he got sick, and we'd take him vegetables from the garden. Grandmother would go over there and cut his hair, and then the little lady lived down the street. I remember when she moved down there, and we would go and help her. And everything that he told was about people, and it was about church, and it was about helping this pastor. And I helped this pastor, and I moved here and helped him, and I taught this Sunday school class, and I won this old boy to the Lord. And everything he told was no work, it was no
Mm.
money made, it was no big bank accounts. It was, here's the people I've touched in my life.
That's fabulous.
And as I sat there, and I was just enthralled by it. I mean, I forgot about Nashville. I was just, wow. Some of the stories I'd never heard.
Sure.
So he got to the end. Paul was not an emotional man, and I try not to be. He was very stoic. Very seldom saw him cry. But he looked at me and tears were running down his face. His lip was quivering. He goes, he's 90, 91. He says, Philip, I'd give anything if I could be active in the kingdom of God again. I'd give anything if I could do it again.
Mm.
Man, I held it together long enough to hug his neck and got back in my car, headed back to I-40 to Nashville, and I cried half the way home. That's what it's about. It's not about this business. It's not about how much money you make, but it's the people and the lives that you touch in the process of doing what God has called you to do. That's what matters. And I'm so glad that I had that foundation that kept me grounded when it's so easy to just caught the big lights, the money, the recognition, and that will come, and that's part of it. But that's not the end goal. What are you doing with that? Who at the end, when you're standing there and your body is no longer able to do the things that you did to make your success, can you look back over your life and say, I helped this one and I changed this person's life and I was made a difference in this person's life? That's what keeps your focus where it needs to be. I'll never forget my last conversation with my grandfather. Never forget it.
Nor should you.
I don't know if I got anything else to add.
No, I think this is where we stop. That was beautiful. It was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.